sweetheart. Little sweetheart. I've been thinking about that this morning. Some of you know I have a very old dog. She's nearly 19. And someone the other day said to me, she's such a little sweetheart. And I replied with, yeah, but it's difficult. She's old. She's a pain sometimes, but she's not. She does have a little sweetheart. And then words, I was thinking about them this morning, and I stroked my dog and I looked into her little eyes, and all there is a sweetheart. But I don't always see her like that. So I decided to set myself a little task today to only see her sweetheart. Not the things that annoy me, and there's nothing she does that is annoying. I'm annoyed because she's getting old and she wanders around and she falls over and I have to pick her up, and when I feed her, her face gets covered in food and I have to wash that. And most of the time I enjoy it because I like caring for her, but other times it wears me down. But I miss seeing her sweetheart. So I was just thinking about these words, sweetheart, and it's a I don't know if it has different connotations in America. I think when we think of the word sweetheart, we think of sweethearts, childhood sweethearts, people who have met from a young age and end up together for the rest of their lives, which is interesting also, that we refer to someone, meeting someone in their young age and having a whole life with them as childhood sweethearts, which sort of points to the fact that we had sweethearts when we were children and we don't now. We could only meet as childhood sweethearts, pure, innocent, unburdened by the world and life, which just, I love words and what they mean. And in my area, which is Essex, predominantly most of the people who live in this sort of area of, at some point probably family came from the east end of London. So this word sweetheart can be used as a greeting, or a name for anyone if you don't know their name. So nice little side topic, we're going to go all over the place with this one. There's a lady who works in a local supermarket. It's like a little mini supermarket, Tesco's Metro I think it's called, or Tesco's Express. And while in that supermarket, I always notice when she's on shift, she's I think she's mixed race, little sort of East London-y type person, a bit rough around the edges, but always smiling. And I can tell that she's had probably quite a tough life. I never spoke to her about it, but you can just see it in someone's eyes. But she gives so much, and she talks to people and she calls, hello sweetheart, you alright sweetheart, how's it going sweetheart? And that's how she refers to everybody. She's referred to me as this. And I've told her she's one of my little unsung heroes. Not so much in them words, but I nodded that I noticed how kind she is to people and how much time she gives to people. Which on a side note reminds me of a story. And I've shared this story with many people. And it seems to stick, and people love this story, and it's even more amazing that I'm still telling this story and the person who's the subject of the story has no idea, and it's been passed on and passed on. And many of you know, if you've listened to these before, I used to work with a guy called Neil Kramer. I think it was at one of his talks or one of his podcasts, he talked about being in a supermarket, but in America, and he was walking down the aisles as normal, and he noticed a woman with a 4-year-old child, and he said that she was probably relatively working class just by, you can tell what she was wearing, what was in her trolley, the amount of money she had. But he said he stopped to observe her conduct with her 4-year-old child. And he was just amazed at this relationship. It was just so authentic, so loving, so pure, and just great all round conduct with her child. She was discussing what was on the shelves and, putting things in the baskets. And as he turned to his side, to his right, I think, there was another woman with a younger child, probably about one maybe, and, just little judgment of that she was probably a little bit more affluent with what she had in a trolley, probably organic, I don't know, whatever, but you can tell someone by what they can afford to buy food-wise. And she was watching also this woman with her 4-year-old child, and he said, I don't know what was going through her mind, but I have a pretty good idea that she was probably watching just like me and in awe of this woman's conduct with her own child, and probably thought, I hope I have a relationship like that with my child one day, or now, whenever. But when she reaches 4, God, I hope that looks wonderful. And this woman who was the object of Neil and this other woman's observations walked around the aisle and disappeared forever, not knowing that her very authentic, natural conduct, without knowing she was being observed, just her everyday interaction with her child, was observed by these two people and changed their lives. And he told that story, and then now I've told that story, and no one knows who the hero of the story is, and she doesn't even know who she is. And to me, honestly, it's such a wonderful example of that, you just walk around this world doing your best all the time, and you have no idea how it affects everything else. Now, this is probably 7, 8, maybe more years ago I heard this, and it's, such a mundane but amazing story. And even I mentioned it to my nephew years ago, and he referred back to it the other day because he remembered it. It's such a powerful example of just your interaction in the everyday world can have massive impact without you ever knowing. So this woman who works in Tesco's, who calls people sweetheart and that, I don't think she realises that anyone who comes in and meets her when she's on a shift, their life is better for it. So she's like one of these little unsung heroes, and probably doesn't even know. And I'm now talking about her and she'll never know. And there's a lady who works in another supermarket who I told her about this lady in this other chain of supermarkets and said, you're the same. When I come in here, I always look forward to talking to you. And she thought she was putting down her job as if it was a menial, well, I'm just working on the checkout. And I said, you don't realise that's not your job. That's what you get paid for. That's what you're doing now, but that's not what your job is. Your job, or your purpose as a human being, is what you give when you do that job. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, I look forward to seeing you. And I'm sure I've seen you when people in front of me in the queue, and you chat to them and ask them, and you have these conversations and give them a bit of time, and sometimes it's to the frustration of the people waiting because she's having a conversation. But she's changing the world in dramatic ways. Dramatic, huge. Someone could walk in there feeling like shit, and then she has a little conversation with him. Nothing major, but you can tell there's a care. She genuinely cares about human beings, individuals. And I was telling her this, maybe not in so many words as I am now, but it made her cry. And I didn't mean to make her cry. I was genuinely pointing out what a wonderful human being she was. So this is just a little side note, but going back to the words little sweetheart, because it just reminded me of the lady in Tesco's. And it's a lovely thing to remember that your conduct and your behaviour changes everything. But going back to sweetheart, I decided to try and only see my dog Dolly as a sweetheart. To have the idea of these words, sweetheart, pure, untouched heart. Do we all not have pure, untouched hearts? Can we see them in others and ourselves, and it is difficult because then I guess the broad topic of this conversation would be forgiveness, because people do things that we don't like, that aren't good, and we find it hard to see through the bad behaviour, let's say, into that sweet heart, that pure heart. And the words little sweetheart, I don't know, it warms my heart to say them. There was a film once called Secret and Lies by Mike Leigh, and it's a really good film actually. I'd recommend that. And the character Brenda Blethyn played used to say the word sweetheart all the time, and it was with such pain that I remember there's a scene in it and she'd say, "Oh, sweetheart, don't break my heart, sweetheart." And it was such a tender way of saying it, she was trying to protect this person from the truth, hence the title Secrets and Lies, which only make things worse. But my mission for today, depending on if I meet anyone, because I live a very solitary life, but to try and see everybody and their sweet hearts, their childlike essence that can be masked by life that has convinced them that they are no longer a sweet heart. And the idea being that if I perceive and feel that sweet heart, then it may change something, and I believe it does. Not instantaneously, not for me to see. I may never know. I may leave the situation really trying my best to see through, let's say, the personality, the ego, the beliefs, the patterns, the dysfunction, whatever someone could be carrying with them. And if I can see past all of that with my I guess the ability that I have to do that, which hopefully would expand the more I practice. So my little practice today will be to forgive all. And it ties into my general belief on what forgiveness is. And I'm sure there's people who've talked about this far greater than me, but I've always said I think it's the only way out of all the horrors, dysfunction in this world. And I've been listening to this podcast called Daryl Cooper recently, and it's not been pleasant, to be honest, because he talks about, he doesn't call himself a historian, but he studies history through books and texts and papers, and comes up with as best he can, a neutral view on a historic event so that we can have some understanding of it. And by having some understanding of it, try not to repeat these things, but it's repetitive. And I listened to, I think it's about 30 hours spread out over several podcasts on the Israel-Palestine conflict from, I think, like maybe late 1800s, of when, the idea was first come out, into up to 1948, and he ended it there. And all I can say is, when you've finished listening to it and the atrocities that are committed on both sides, there's a feeling of, how does this ever come to an end? Because you're now 3, 4, 5, if you go past 48 and we're now up to date, how many generations have been brought up hating the other side? And you could ask them to forgive, and they'd probably say, how can I forgive when this has been done? How can I forgive when this has been done? And they destroyed my family, they've killed my children. And you'd say, yeah, how do you even... I wouldn't dare to ask them to forgive each other, but the truth of it is there's no way out of it unless someone does. And I'm always pondering this, and I've been asked about it, and people go, but you can't. There has to be accountability, there has to be justice, there has to be some acknowledgement or punishment, or they shouldn't be walking this earth. They did this. And I don't have any answer to this, apart from that maybe there is an accountability. I don't know, but the energy with which we want someone to experience justice, however that looks for whoever wants to be passing this justice, which I don't think we really have the ability to do that. But yes, if someone's harming someone, then they're caught, and I guess evidence suggests that they may do it again, then what do we do with these people? Yeah, maybe you have to protect society from these people. But how we do it is with love, I guess. And I listen to a lot of people. Most of the stuff that really resonates with me is when someone talks about this forgiveness. And there's a guy called St. John, I can't remember his name. I listen to him a lot. It's just a bit of a mouthful of a name. And he's been faced with real atrocities. He lives out in Tanzania, where there's a lot of child abuse, child sacrifice, rituals, just an ancient part of the culture that's slowly, hopefully, wearing out, but it still goes on. And he's seen it firsthand, and he rescues children and protects them, and mainly disabled children, because they're the worst afflicted by this abuse out there, and exploitation. And he said he couldn't forgive, as a man, as a human. Something happened, and it was a friend of his, and he found out this friend that had become a friend had returned to drug abuse and harmed this child. And he was shocked and angered and wanted to hate and punish this man. But as a spiritual person, he tried to forgive. And he said, I couldn't, as a walking, talking human being, a man. I never could, he said. But if I let Source, Universe, God, Spirit come through me, because that's the only thing that can forgive. We can't, but we can allow it, forgiveness, to come through us. He said, as a man, I can't. But if I let God in, it can forgive, and I must forgive. And things like that hit me hard, really hit me hard, because I know how far I fall short on forgiveness. I'm getting better, but how far I fall short. And I've never been in a situation like that where there's been an absolute horrendous crime. So can we see the sweet hearts in all of these people? Because they were, at some point... Oh, my dog's stirring and coughing. These people, at some point, who commit these horrendous atrocities, crimes, violence, were sweet of heart and pure of heart when they were born. I mean, we always have that argument of is there people who are born with a dark heart? I don't know. Maybe there is, but I'd say it's a very rare occurrence. But we usually end up this way. So, if we want to eradicate, big word, eradicate. I'm not going to use that word. If we feel useless in this world about all the things we see as evil and wrong and hateful and violent and we wonder what we can do. We can only do what comes across our path, one. If we see it and we're there and we have the opportunity to stop something, yes. It came across our path. It was something that the universe required us to observe and to act upon. But all the other things we read about and listen to and hear, sorry, my dog, aren't actually crossing our paths in the real sense of the word. We've just sought them out and they're miles away. But if we, within our own lives, because I do, I've had many conversations and people go, is there evil? Is there a Satan? Is there this dark energy? And is there this thing that just wants to corrupt? I'd say there is. What that is, I don't know. And yet we want to eradicate it from this world, but it's not for eradication. It's for us to do our tiny piece of eradicating in our own lives. And I'm not preaching here. This is for me. Like even the idea of seeing my dog as a sweetheart only, and not to be annoyed, or to forgive myself when I do, and redirect my thoughts, my patterns, my energy, all of these things in my own life and with everybody I meet. Can I see their sweetheart? Because we all have it. So my idea, and not my idea, not my idea at all. But my feeling around forgiveness, it's the all. It's the highest bar to see through the behaviours of others and know underneath it there is this pure, untouched heart. How you go about that in your own life, in your own interactions, is up to you. But if you want to see more harmony in the outer world, it's the same bloody thing over and over again. Find it in your own world. How much, I read a book, 2010, 2011. Someone gave me a Krishnamurti book, and I used to just read a paragraph at a time, and probably didn't understand it completely. Well, of course I didn't. But it was quite new to me, but I knew there was truth in it. I was reading a little paragraph and would sit with that for like a day going, wow. And there was one part that he said, and I'm completely butchering it or paraphrasing it here, but it struck me to the point where I was even frightened to leave my flat after for fear of corrupting the world. And it was violence of the mind. Any thought that's not of the divine or allowed to flow through us, meaning our own thoughts that are ego driven for our own purposes, any thought that is not coming from source is violent. And I sat there and just like, oh my word, all my thoughts are violent. I didn't want to leave my flat. I was just like, I'm better off sitting here because I don't want to cause any more harm out there. My thoughts, I need to get a handle on my thoughts, which, funny enough, my next little thing was, how do I do that? If we wonder why there is so much violence, and if you're not sure how much is out there, and I'm recommending it if you're interested in that sort of stuff, Daryl Cooper, Martyr Made podcast, and you don't need to listen to much to realise that when we are detached from our loving, sweet hearts, it can go horribly wrong. When I say unbelievably wrong, I mean unbelievably wrong. You couldn't imagine what humans do to other humans, when possessed and taken out of their hearts. And it seems to happen so easily. So easily. And I'm hoping, no, I'm trusting that as we move through the next few years, and I do feel we're in a different time now. I hear language being used is different. I see understanding of a spiritual concepts being brought into everyday conversations. I do feel that we're almost done with that level of violence and disconnection from God. How that plays out, how long it takes to move out of that period, but we've been in some dark places over the last few 100,000. I couldn't tell you, but a long time, and I just don't see a repeat of it, because I feel people are watching their thoughts and their perceptions more closely. So I hope you got something from this. It was a bit of meandering, but it was really all about forgiveness, because to me, them words, a sweet heart, which I'll keep saying, I love it, is all about seeing that in ourselves and others. Can we? And can we catch ourselves when we're not? And that could be a myriad of, let's say, use Krishnamurti's words, violence of the mind, criticism, comparing, stories of someone's behaviour. Yeah, we can discuss it and observe it, but what's your energy underneath when you do this? And I'm, maybe someone listening to this is like, God, what's he getting on about? This is really always for me. I've always struggled with compassion. You wouldn't necessarily notice it on the outside, because I am generally a kind person when I choose to be. It's interesting, when I choose to be. And others I can judge and go, well, I'm not helping that person because look, they did this, this, and this. And that's my blind spot. That was my blind spot. Because my observations may have been correct. This idea of judging, we're allowed to judge and to discriminate of who we hang out with and who we don't, but the energy, just know it's not them, it's their behaviour, their ego, their patterns and their pain. Underneath it, again, they have this sweet heart. So, for me, to see the energy of wit, to see the energy in how I talk about someone, behave with someone, really it's always this level of forgiveness for, and who am I? Who am I to but I've caught myself going, well, I don't like that behaviour. And I might not like that behaviour, but there's a level underneath it that I'm almost not forgiving them for it, which is nonsense. They didn't have a choice on how they behaved, really, because if it's coming from an unconscious pattern, until they decide to change that, there's nothing I can do but apart from love them and see their natural, pure state underneath it all. I had some other notes here, but I'll leave them for another one, because this is probably very long and I don't know who's going to listen to this, but I just thought I'd share this one today because I've not put one out for a while and I felt this one today. So thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll try and put some more out now if I get back on a flow. Take care. Bye.
seasons start to blur. Long lost footsteps linger on, but you're not here. Something messing with my scales. Darkness in the whites of my eyes. Something keeps you on my mind, shackled to the hands of time.
Enjoyed that music and you listened to the end. The song was called Hands of Time, featuring Alexander London on vocals, and the artist is called Crack and Smack. Not the best name, but a good tune. And also the guy I was talking about, who was talking about forgiveness, he lives in Tanzania. His YouTube channel is John St. Julian Baba Wanyama. He's a beautiful man, worth listening to. And the film that I was talking about was Mike Leigh's Secrets and Lies, and the podcast was Daryl Cooper's Martyr Made podcast. Hope you enjoyed it all, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.